Okay, you're live.
We're going to call to order the Planning Commission. It's Tuesday, June the 30th, 2020, 5 p.m. I am in the mayor's conference room. This is a virtual Zoom meeting. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Avery,
Present.
Mr. Buttorf,
Present.
Ms. Bupp is out. Mr. Burns,
Present.
Mr. Webb,
Present.
Mr. Paris,
Here.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Present.
We have a quorum, thank you.
I am seeking approval of the minutes for May the 26th of 2020, unless you have any comments, concerns, or questions.
Motion.
Motion to, oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Bill.
Motion to approve minutes.
A motion to approve by Bill. Do I have a second? Mr. Avery?
Second.
Oh, I heard somebody. There we go. Steve. Roll call for a vote, I believe.
Yes. Mr. Avery,
Approve.
Mr. Buttorf,
Approve.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Aye.
and carries.
Okay, the docket is there any concerns? Can we have approval of the docket?
I don't have any changes to be made.
No
at this
changes,
time.
it'll stand as is. We ready to, we'll go ahead and move into, do we need to vote on that if it's, is this?
No, I don't.
Okay. We're gonna move forward with some old business. We have a few things under old business. We're gonna start with PC-20-11. The JT Development Group LLC filed a preliminary plat application with waivers for properties at 3700 and 3906 Cooper's Lane. The property is zoned R1, which is residential. The proposed subdivision of Cooper's Crossing will have 97 lots. The docket number is PC-20-11. Do we have representation?
Yes, we do. John Kraft with the law firm of Young, Lynn, Anderson Kraft. Jason Copperwaite is also present and will be presenting. On behalf of the applicant, as indicated by Mr. McCutcheon, this is a preliminary plat approval. In effect, the first three dockets are somewhat interrelated, but I will address solely the first one, which is docket 2011. This is a preliminary plat, and ultimately we will be seeking later this evening several variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals. And with regards to this, it's a 97 lot subdivision, owner occupied. But while it's 97 lots, if you look at the plat, and I'll let Jason Copperwaite cover the plat specifically, but there is a bit of green space. And when I say a bit, quite a bit of green space being created in order to create these lots. This is a preliminary plat. It will ultimately connect with Williams Crossing subdivision. And that is the other those are the other dockets that we will take on later with the Plan Commission, likewise with regards to a rezoning pertaining to the original PUD of Williams Crossing, and then likewise a preliminary plat of Williams Crossing with that new piece of it dealing with Cooper's Crossing. I'm going to turn it over to Jason Copperwaite, let Jason address the issues with regards to the plat, and then ultimately discuss the fact of what is available to JT Development if this were a by right without the green space and the number of lots that could be there, as well as the density per acre with regards to what's being proposed to you. One of the things that you will note is we are seeking some waivers, and those waivers are likewise covered on the second page or on the third page of the staff report. And likewise, I'll let Jason address those waivers with respect to each of those that are requested. Jason, you want to take it from here?
Actually, before Jason says anything, I want to note that all of those of you who may be watching us on Facebook Live, you are allowed to make comments or ask questions on Facebook Live. Shelby will be monitoring those comments, and we will do our best to address anything that may come up there. Thanks.
Thank you, Chad.
Good evening, Jason Copperwaite with Paul Primavera and Associates, 301 East Chestnut Street, Corydon, Indiana. As John mentioned, it's a 97 lot single family development with actually 3 outlots, 2 of which are for the existing houses that are there, and one is a lot on the far side that's up out of the floodplain that would also be a large lot. When you take the total acreage of the site, which is 40.7 acres, and the total 100 single family residences, that gives you a density of about 2.45 dwelling units per acre. The development features an entrance on Cooper's Lane, a connection to Limestone Trace, which is in Creekstone Ridge, a connection to Laverne Way, which is in William Crossing, and also a connection, as John referred to, the next 2 docket items would be to redo a cul-de-sac in Williams Crossing. It would feature a connection to that rework of the cul-de-sac as well. If you'll recall, the item was on the agenda for the last couple of months and was tabled voluntarily by the applicant because they wanted to get a neighborhood meeting gathered. And of course, with everything going on with the virus, that it took a little while to get that organized. So a couple of weeks ago, they had a neighborhood meeting in the cul-de-sac there at William Crossing. And we had some chat. Obviously, we couldn't agree on all aspects, but the kind of the 3 largest items that we heard were density, drainage, and then pretty much the connection to Creekstone Ridge. Again, with density, when you take the 10.3 acre common area that we're providing, which will be perpetual green space owned by the homeowners association, again, we're down to less than what your ordinance request for R1, which is 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. We're down at 2.45. The lot sizes in what we're proposing in the denser portion are exactly the same as what's in Williams Crossing. They're on average 50 by 120. The homes will be very similar to what's being constructed in Williams Crossing, with values of about $265,000 to $350,000. And similar materials to what they're using in Williams Crossing, though some of those are all craftsman style hardy board type houses, though some of these might be brick as well. And then drainage. In the common area A, down below, we're intending to construct a very large detention basin there and convey just as much of our stormwater into that detention basin as we can and over detain there to try and alleviate flooding downstream. That takes probably 2/3 of the water that flows toward Patricia Drive away from that and into that detention basin. So we think that'll be a big help. We know this board doesn't deal with drainage, but we know you hear those all the time. And then the connection of Limestone Trace into Creekstone, it's required by your ordinance. We are required to show it as part of the plat. I mean, if there needs to be further discussion on that, we certainly can have that. But, for reasons of the ordinance, we have to show that. So we think it's a good development. We think it fits in with Williams Crossing. We think the home values are at or above what the home values are in Creekstone Ridge and other surrounding areas. With that, I'll turn it back over to John.
Thank you, Jason. As indicated, the waivers that we're requesting, and Jason touched on them primarily. Yes.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
We're basically, the waiver from the Plan Commission would be to reduce the side yard setback from the 6 feet required by R1 to 5 feet, again, which is similar to what we're doing in Williams Crossing. And then the variances would be minimum lot area down to about 6,000 square feet, minimum lot width from 70 to 50, minimum lot frontage from 50 to 49, and then maximum lot coverage. And again, all these are very similar to what's being developed in Williams Crossing.
And ultimately, as we look at those waivers, those, of course, are not matters that would not go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. Those would come before you with respect to what we're requesting of you, or those that are shown in the gray. What we're actually receiving or looking for from the Board of Zoning Appeals when it meets this evening at 7 would be those other variances that we would be seeking that are also set out in your staff report. Again, we're here this evening on a preliminary plat approval. Jason has set out all of the elements with regards to the request and why it should be approved, primarily dealing with the density. I know that's an issue that came up, but I think when we take into consideration the density in light of the 10.3 acre common area, this not only fits, but it actually fits well with what's being done. As I indicated, this preliminary plat, if approved, ultimately fits in with the next two agenda items that we'll cover those separately. I'll take any questions you may have of me, and Jason, if there's anything else you need to add, please do.
Okay, at this time, we'll get to the board's comments, concerns, and questions, but we'll go ahead and move because I believe there's going to probably be some different types of comments from the public. But we're going to open up for public comment at this point in time. Is there anyone? I know that how do you want to handle it, Chad?
Before we move to live comments, I know there's a couple people in City Council who want to say something. I have a large number of letters that have been sent to us, and I need to just kind of go over those with you. I also want to reiterate there is a lot of inconsistencies within these letters. There seems to be some question about whether this is actually a rezoning. A lot of the letters mention rezoning. I want to make it clear that the approval of platting of property in the city of Jeffersonville is solely the responsibility of the Planning Commission. It does not receive further approval by the mayor or the city council. It is our understanding that there may be some misinformation floating around there, and we just want to make sure that is clear. So the applicant is not asking for rezoning. They're asking specifically for a preliminary plat in this case. With that, I will begin the public comment section. Sandy Plass has given us a signature list, asking that we do not want the end of Limestone Trace open to the new subdivision. There are 102 signatures on this application representing 67 households. So there's a lot of husband and wife, etc. on the list, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. There also appears to be an online petition circulating with about 34 signatures and some comments. That a lot of those signatures are similar, or the same signatures, I should say, to signatures that are on the other, the online petition specifically states that they feel that the project will worsen drainage issues, increase traffic, increase noise, and such. So with that, I will begin with the letters. And there are a lot of them, so bear with me. Ted and Pam Sachek at 4505 Greystone Way say, we moved here in 2003 when there was just a flag for Coyle Chevrolet and some conversation about growth on 62. Kudos to the city for bringing in all those jobs and businesses. Our concerns are the following. Traffic on Charlestown and Cooper has increased dramatically and speeding is rampant. Many people use Greystone via Limestone Trace as a shortcut between Charlestown and Cooper. The new subdivision already has egress to both Charlestown and Cooper. If Limestone Trace becomes an access point, I suspect 30 to 40 households will utilize it, which is entirely a negative impact on a great little subdivision. Thank you, Ted and Pam Sachek. Melanie Coghill writes, hello, my name is Melanie Coghill and I have owned 4235 Limestone Trace for 18 years. I live at the corner of Limestone Trace and Greystone, which is where people turn to get to Cooper's Lane. My vehicles and my brick mailbox have all been hit over the years due to speeders underestimating their speed at the turn. I do not want the new subdivision connected to ours in Limestone Trace, as it would just increase that activity. I also want to have speed bumps in our neighborhood as well. Thank you for your time. Regards, Melanie Coghill. Jean Ball of 4208 Patricia Drive writes, Department of Planning and Zoning. With regard to the future development known as Cooper's Crossing, located at 3800 block of Cooper's Lane, I have a few questions and comments pertaining to the development. I would like to be read into the record during the public hearing on Tuesday, April 28th. I reside on the southwest side of this future development, and my property will be directly impacted. My concerns are as follows. The proposed 97 lots homes are far too many dwellings for such a small plot of land. Bringing 97 homes into this development will cause more traffic on roads that already struggle to accommodate the neighborhoods in the area. This development will affect hundreds of homeowners, taxpayers already living there. I oppose to having so many houses placed on this parcel. The recommended lot size is a minimum of 70 feet wide, not the proposed 50 feet wide. What will the size of the homes on these lots be? What price will these homes sell for? Will there be an easement between my property line and the end of the lots lining my property? If so, how wide will this be? Will the existing tree line lining my property be left alone and remain in place? Will the new homes being built upon my property line have fencing in the backyards? My final concern is regarding drainage. I will need to be ensured that the Cooper's Crossing development will not in any way drain any water of any type onto my property. Any drainage of water will cause flooding, preventing me access to my house from the road. My yard is already impacted with flooding from a previous neighborhood that was built with poor drainage and an unfair drainage design that flows directly into my lower yard. Thank you for your time, Gene Ball. Jerry Ewell says, my name is Jerry Ewell, youngest son of Jude and Mary Jean Ewell. I reside at 3615 Cooper's Lane. I was born and raised on this farm. I have questions and concerns about the proposed rezoning of the 38 block of Cooper's Lane to develop Cooper's Crossing. With the proposed plat, lots are considerably smaller, decreasing from the currently required 10,000 square feet to the proposed 5999 square feet is quite a big difference. Primary concerns are drainage and safety issues due to increased traffic. Drainage, flooding, sewage. Significant drainage issues exist at the 3800 block of Cooper Lane. At least once and sometimes twice a year, there is flooding over Cooper Lane at the north end of the parcel. This is a decades-long issue. As it shows on the preliminary plat map, approximately 20% of the proposed houses will be within the 100-year flood line. With 97 new homes as platted, how will imminent and likely worse flooding be mitigated? Traffic burden. I also have concerns with the increased traffic on Cooper's Lane. Dump trucks already travel the road at a steady rate to and from Hanson Quarry on Utica-Sellersburg Road. It seems with 97 additional homes, there would be a considerable increase in traffic on Cooper's Lane. With the additional traffic burden, will Cooper's Lane be widened? If so, that's another cost to the city taxpayers. What measures will be taken to manage the increased traffic? It could potentially cost the city of Jeffersonville and/or the developer a considerable financial investment to effectively manage the drainage with so many homes on this plot of land. It is not that I do not welcome additional neighbors, I simply prefer less dense housing to better assure the surrounding land can absorb the water drainage sewage load. With a quick look at the Creekstone Ridge neighborhood, on the northeast property line of the proposed plat from Google Earth in comparison to the proposed plat in the 3800 block of Cooper's Lane, you'll notice that the relative difference in the number of homes per acre that currently exist versus the proposed plat with reduced lot size. The number of houses per acre in the proposed development at 3800 Coopers should be reconsidered based on drainage issues alone. However, were the builder to adhere to the current zoning guidelines, 10,000 square foot per lot with 70-foot frontage, and ensure there would be no additional drain and water issues, I see no reason why a revised version of the plan should not go forward. I appreciate your time and attention. Sincerely, Jerry Ewell. Jude and Mary Jean Ewell write, we are Gene and Mary Jean Ewell and own the property at 3615 Cooper's Lane across from the proposed development. We have the following concerns after reviewing the plan. 1, drainage issues. With this property, drainage issues with this property need to be addressed. Several acres of the land are in the 100-year floodplain. During spring rains and storms, there are oftentimes measurably high water to the point of flooding over Cooper Lane. It appears that are homes planned near and inside that zone. These homes closer to the flooding source have an increased risk of flooding and could effectively bring the 100-year flood zone line down to a 75-year, 50-year, or worse flood line. For example, if deemed a 50-year flood zone, that means a 45 chance of flooding over a homeowner's 30-year mortgage. It would present more cost to the developer or potentially the city, but we feel the flooding risk in the special flood hazard zones should be addressed. 2, 97 additional homes within the area are platted will exacerbate an already heavily trafficked Cooper's Lane. With the current residential load and the heavy truck traffic to and from the Hanson's Quarry on Utica-Sellersburg Road, it is presently a dangerous road. Also note that traffic will be routed through Limestone Drive in a neighboring community. This will likely create traffic complaints from disgruntled existing homeowners. 3, the number of homes planned will increase noise and pollution. We are not against development nor the sale of land, however, feel that thoughtful development in this area could be a welcome addition. Please consider these points. Jeffersonville has developed beautifully under this administration, and we applaud the many improvements. Let's not make a big mistake now. Respectfully submitted, June and Mary Jean Poole. Lisa and Charlie Garwood at 4211 Patricia Drive, write, Department of Planning and Zoning. Our home is directly impacted by this development, and we will have 12 new homes along our property line. Due to the immediate impact, we have a few concerns regarding the proposed future development known as Cooper's Crossing. Our first concern is with the proposed 97 lots in such a small plot of land. We oppose the amount of homes being built and that the developers are proposing a variance on the lot sizes. The standard size is 70 feet, and the developers are asking for an exception and wanting to make the lots 50 feet wide. Our second concern is regard to traffic. Charlestown, Jefferson Pike, and Cooper's Lane are already very high traffic roads, and the addition of 97 homes will greatly impact traffic that the roads are not wide enough to handle. These roads are used as a cut through for people wanting to avoid the traffic on Highway 62. If this development is approved, will the city be widening the roads to handle all this high traffic? Our third concern and our biggest concern is regarding the drainage. Where is the drainage planned for this development? We are overwhelmed with drainage currently coming into our property from every direction. We have standing water in our yards every time that it rains due to the overflow of drainage from the Crimson Point and Limestone Trace neighborhoods. This standing water adds many mosquitoes and causes soil erosion. The flooding from drainage impacts access to our home. We have to drive through water and put new gravel down many times a year just to maintain our property access. Our yard cannot handle any more drainage, and these proposed 97 houses will affect us all tremendously. Our fourth concern is the decreased security that comes with increasing the population in this area. This area has seen a huge increase in development of homes in recent years. How will this impact safety, security, police, and fire protection? Our fifth and final concern is in regard to the tree line that lines our property. Will the developers be leaving the trees alone? Our hope is that they will. If they do not, we would like to request that they put in privacy fences for each lot. We would like to know where the easement will be added. If the trees are removed, where will the easement be in regard to our property line? We thank you all for taking the time to listen to our concerns regarding the proposed development of Cooper's Crossing. We have lived in our home for 22 years now and have a great amount of love for this area. Having our thoughts and concerns heard by all means is so much to us. Thank you again, Lisa and Charlie Garwood. Carol Simpson writes, in regards to Cooper's Crossing development, my wife and I have some questions and concerns. First and foremost, referring to the plat itself, we see that 17 lots are totally or partially in the 100-year floodplain. A 5-foot side-to-side setback is shown with a 6-foot setback required. This will create a house that is the maximum 40 feet wide, requiring a variance. The 50-foot lot width would also require a variance from the 70-foot lot width required. An additional variance is needed to allow a minimum 5,999 square foot lot from 10,000 square foot required. 83 lots do not meet the 10,000 square foot required. Lots 46 and 47 should be eliminated to allow for a pull-off entrance at Cooper's Crossing, similar to Peachtree Boulevard, Hidden Lanes, and Teakwood Landing. We feel 100 lots is too many for this size of property. It should be redesigned with approximately 50 houses at higher prices. We are against granted the 3 above variances. These needed variances to current requirements would also open the doors for other developers to squeeze in as many houses as possible into purchase property. In addition, there will be added traffic on Cooper's Lane. A development of 100 tracks would add considerable traffic to Cooper's Lane. Are there plans included by the city to widen Cooper's Lane to the same degree as Holman's Lane? The entrance exit of Peachtree Boulevard is blind to westbound traffic on Cooper's Lane due to an existing hill. There's also a blind hill further west at Tuckiana Way. Cooper's Lane sees an excessive amount of dump trucks of gravel and asphalt from the Hanson Quarry and semi-trucks, including oversized truck loads. At various sections of Cooper's Lane, the edge of the road is a drop-off of several inches or more, causing a hazard when the oversized trucks use Cooper Lane, and there is nowhere to pull over and let them pass. It has also happened that the dump trucks tend to cross the line and cause traffic to go off the road. The speed limit is currently 30 miles an hour, which is not currently followed by the big trucks as well as cars. A dangerous situation in many ways. Adding a minimum of another 100 cars to traffic just increases the danger. In summary, we are totally against this plan as presented, laid out due to traffic concerns, building in the floodplain, and 3 excessive variance changes that are required. We recommend this plan not be approved until developers can present a plan that falls within current requirements and Cooper's Lane Road conditions are addressed. Thank you for your attention to these concerns. Sincerely, Carol Simpson, 3325 Cooper's Lane. Patrick Lancaster at 4207 Patricia Drive writes, Department of Planning and Zoning. I have a few concerns I would like to be placed in the record in regard to the future development of Cooper's Crossing located on the 3800 block of Cooper's Lane. I live at the end of Patricia Drive, and my property is connected to the proposed development near the Common Area A and the Common Trail. My concerns are as follows. The lot sizes are required to be 70 feet wide instead of the proposed 50 feet wide. I am opposed to the lot sizes being smaller than the standard lot size. The proposed lot sizes are too small, especially in comparison to neighborhoods in surrounding areas. 2, 97 homes are going to create more traffic in the area than that already has a high traffic flow. Cooper's Lane and Charlestown Jefferson Pike are not equipped to handle any more traffic. 3, the building of these homes will decrease the value of my home. 4, the drainage and flooding are already an issue placed upon my property. I am not opposed to any drainage flowing into the flood zone or onto my property, as the current drainage and flooding already causes standing water and soil erosion. Where will the drainage go? 5, will the developers be building privacy fences in the backyards of these homes? Thank you for taking the time to hear my concerns regarding the proposed development of Cooper's Crossing. Patrick Lancaster. Sarah Garwood of 4211 Patricia Drive writes, Hello, members of the Jeffersonville community. I hope everyone is staying well during these times, and I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to hear our concerns regarding the potential future development of Cooper's Crossing. My name is Sarah Garwood. I'm the daughter of Lisa and Charlie Garwood, and also a resident at 4211 Patricia Drive. My home will be one of the most immediately impacted by all the buildings surrounding our lot, and therefore I have some concerns that I wish to be heard. My first concern is the proposed 97 lots in the small area of land. In this area, I find that many of my neighbors deeply value the land and we have and all the beauty that this brings. The proposed Cooper's Crossing neighborhood wants to place homes on 50-foot wide lots when the required size is 70-foot wide lots. I am extremely opposed to this exception to the rule that the developers are requesting. It is forcing these homes to be small and very close together, which in turn may not make them worth very much. In today's market, it is not likely that anyone will spend $250,000 plus on a small single-family home with a small yard, especially not with our current economic crisis and the time it will take for our country to come back from what's occurring. My second concern about the potential development of Cooper's Crossing is the wildlife. Just on our 5 acres of land, we have coyote, deer, snakes, raccoons, skunks, groundhogs, and sometimes turkeys. The wildlife on the proposed lot will all be forced to move into the surrounding areas, which will then lead to them getting hit by cars, requiring the city to clean up, or the city will need to come rescue and relocate them while they were still alive. The land around us is depleting by the day with more and more development, and it is consistently harming the wildlife and the earth. My third concern is security in the area. With so few neighbors, there is a low crime rate in the area. This is a safe area, and I wish it to remain this way. Will the proposed developers or the city be putting in street lights throughout the proposed neighborhood? My fourth concern is about the tree line. There is a line of trees along our property and the Ools property line that grant us the privacy and security we need. Will these trees be left alone, or would they be torn down? If they are torn down, will the developers be building fences along the houses' backyards? I am deeply hoping that the trees remain up for our privacy. My final concern and my biggest concern is regarding the drainage. The drainage from the new Williamsburg Crossings building is already draining into our yard. The drainage from the Crimson Point Limestone Trace neighborhoods overflows into our yard as well. This drainage is a major issue. My parents have tried to get help from the developers of that neighborhood and from the drainage board, but there has been nothing done to help us. While I understand that this is from a previous development, this drainage flows through Gene Ball's front yard, through our front yard, and then would impact the proposed common area A and common trail area. There is consistently garbage and debris flowing into this area with rain, and this area would need constant upkeep. I would like these photos of our front yard and Gene Ball's front yard to be displayed to all at the meeting. Fortunately, I can't really do that very easily, but these two photos were taken from my car as I was attempting to leave my house. They show a flooded driveway. As you can all see, access to our homes has been greatly impacted by the drainage and flooding. Our yards truly cannot handle another development that does not care about what happens to us and flows their drainage and sewage into our yards. I would like to be ensured there will be no more added drainage into our yard, because then we truly would not be able to enter or leave our home. Please hear our cries and our exhaustion from the repercussions of an issue that we did not create but are left to deal with every time it rains. I am very appreciative of and thankful for everyone taking the time to listen to what I believe we will be most impacted by. I am filled with pride for this city and for this small quarter of Jeffersonville that I call home. All my best, Sarah Garwood. Terry Gully from 4203 Patricia Drive writes, "Hello, Planning Commission. We moved here on Patricia Drive in 1991. What sold us was the large lots and that it was so quiet. There has been a lot of changes since then. The land behind us was farmland, which was sold to a developer to build houses. We were told there would be large lots and houses similar to ours. Instead, there are at least 75 houses on smaller lots. The drainage problems we have are terrible. A couple neighbors have so much water in their driveways that they can't get to and from their houses when we have a hard rain. We knew we were in the bubble and would possibly be annexed into the city, which happened, and our taxes more than doubled. The expressway has since been built and the new bridge has opened as well. A lot of progress and growth for our city and taxes as well, and I do understand for the most part. You guys keep building around here and there is so much traffic, and the noise from the expressway and the train is unbelievable. The schools are so overcrowded that my grandkids go to a private school. To build 97 houses on lots that are smaller than required is a matter of greed. I do not think it is a good idea to build so many houses on such small lots. Just because a builder can make a few extra dollars on another house doesn't make it a good idea. The minimum square feet per lot has been set for a reason. The only reason to decrease the size of the lots is pure greed, and we do not need it. Please take my opinion into consideration when asked to reduce the size of the lots. Mike Moore has done an incredible job, and hopefully he will see this request to reduce the size of the lots as a bad decision and not let it pass. Why is it that all the builders in Jeff want to build tiny houses on tiny lots? Large lots and bigger houses are very hard to find in Jeffersonville. I appreciate you and all that you do for the city, Terry Gull. Kelly and Tyler Cooltoss from 4219 Limestone Trace, right. Hello, my husband and I live in Creekstone Ridge at 4219 Limestone Trace. We have been informed that the developers of Cooper Crossing are seeking to rezone and increase the density of homes in the proposed neighborhood. It is our understanding that the developers would also like to connect to Creekstone Ridge via Limestone Trace. We have significant concerns with both. The biggest concern we have is the connection to Limestone Trace. We are very worried about people from the neighborhood using limestone as a cut through and increasing traffic through our family-friendly subdivision. I am worried for the safety of all the residents who run, walk, and ride bikes in our neighborhood. We have a lot of small children and pets, and I can see the increased traffic becoming a major safety issue. We are also concerned that the increased traffic could increase the probability of cars parked on limestone getting sideswiped. It is our understanding that Cooper's Crossing will connect to the developer's adjacent subdivision, Williams Crossing, so their residents and emergency vehicles already have access to Cooper's Lane and Charlestown Pike. The only reason for them to also connect us to via limestone would be to use our neighborhood as a cut through. This would be especially problematic if Cooper's Crossing is rezoned, allowing an additional density of homes. Please note our comments and share our concerns at the upcoming June 30th meeting. You are welcome to call us if you have any questions. Thank you, Kelly and Tyler Cooltoss. David Wilmot writes, I've lived in Jackson Heights since 1996, and since Georgia Crossing built in 2000 and the other neighborhoods have been built off Charlestown Pike and Cooper's Lane, we've had issues with water runoff. People cutting through the neighborhoods, throwing trash in our yards, but the main issues are with a development of this size and wanting to reduce the size of the lots to 50 feet, the property values are sure to drop and more cut-throughs, traffic will be ridiculous. I don't think it's a good idea, and I am opposed. Sincerely, David Wilmot. C. Davis at 3800 Cooper's Lane writes, to whom it may concern, I am writing to you as a concerned property owner at 3409 Cooper's Lane regarding the planned development of the 3800 block of Cooper's Lane. Here are my concerns. 1, since nearly half of the 40 acres will not be developed due to flood areas, electrical hazard area, and other issues, that would mean approximately 20 acres would have 97 homes. This indicates to me that the homes will be valued at a reasonably low range of $150,000, give or take. I worry that it will lower the value of my own property and the property of my neighbors. 2, road traffic safety is also an issue as the access road, Cooper's Lane, is already heavily trafficked and at times dangerous with the quarry trucks. With 97 homes, that could mean nearly 200 additional vehicles on this narrow road. 3, should I be concerned with personal safety and property security with an additional number of people added to the neighborhood? Possibly. I do not have a problem with developing the farm-sized single-family residential property into a neighborhood of homes. My conflict is with the total number of homes to be built, the loss of property value, the safety issues related to traffic on Cooper's Lane, and personal security with the increased population in our rural environment. Please consider reducing the number of new homes to less than half. Please reduce from 97 homes to no more than 40 to 45 range, hopefully less. This would reduce the traffic on our rural road. It would also add acreage to each newly built home and hopefully not reduce property values to all of us. And last but not least, the new property owners and current surrounding property owners will have a greater sense of safety and security. Thanking you in advance for your attention and consideration to this matter. Regards, C. Davis. Jason and Sarah Thompson write, as a concerned neighbor of the 3800 block of Cooper's Lane, we are opposed to the proposed rezoning of the property to be named Cooper's Crossing. We respectfully asked for no zoning change on this parcel. Our reasons include the proposal does not address increased use of an already dangerous road where drivers routinely speed. The proposed entrance and exit from Cooper's Lane is immediately across from a driveway that serves 2 houses and a large natural gas pumping station. This proposal is not consistent with the surrounding properties on Cooper's Lane of larger single-family lots. The proposal would incur additional costs to our property and require us to pay to connect to the city sewer system. The proposal presents a significant threat to loss of property value of my property at 3815 Cooper's Lane. Jason and Sarah Thompson. Robert and Pamela Ellis write, it is our understanding that JT Development Group wants to build 97 homes at this location. That means that the lots are going to be very small. With small lots comes homes which will lower the value of our property and homes. We live on Patricia Drive and everyone here has lots of around 2 to 4 acres. Building these overcrowded new homes is just adding to the already congested traffic in the area also. Everyone goes down Charlestown Pike in order to stay off Highway 62, and we do not need further congestion. I realize that building new homes in that area is most likely inevitable, but they should be nicer homes on larger lots. The builder just wants to make all the money he can off this parcel, no matter what it does to the area. Robert and Pamela Ellis. Jim Ferber from Creekstone Ridge writes, I am in favor of this project. I know the developer and I know that they do quality work. I believe there are instigators providing incorrect information on the project in hopes of stopping it. Sincerely, Jim Ferber. Brian Bain writes, I am sending this email in response to the upcoming Jeffersonville Board of Zoning meeting on April 28, 2020, which the Cooper's Crossing development request will be discussed. As a resident of the Creekstone Ridge neighborhood, I am requesting that the Board of Zoning take into consideration drainage and infrastructure issues surrounding this area prior to the start of any new development. I have no objections with the proposed development. However, I ask that the following items be taken into consideration. 1, during construction, the developer take necessary actions to minimize dust and pollution to the residences of Creekstone Ridge. 2, no construction equipment and vehicles should drive through or be parked in Creekstone Ridge. 3, improve the current drainage between Williamsburg Crossing and Creekstone Ridge. 4, review the drainage plan from the Creekstone Ridge retention pond on Silver Slate that drains into the property of the proposed development. A group of residents, developer, and city to come up with agreed upon solution. 5, improve Charlestown Pike and Cooper's Lane to accommodate additional traffic. 6, improve all railroad crossings on Charlestown Pike, Cooper's Lane, and Utica-Sellersburg to last more than 6 months to a year. 7, initiate a weight limit of trucks on Charlestown Pike and Cooper's Lane to prevent further deterioration. My assumption is that the houses that will be built in Cooper's Lane Crossing development will be of the same style, size, and quality as the Williamsburg Crossing, continuing to make this an attractive area while maintaining and growing property values. Regards, Brian Bain. Kevin and Vicki Ewell write, my husband Kevin and I are current owners of the property at 3700 Cooper's Lane in Sellersburg, the property in the proposed Cooper's Crossing development. This property, along with the property at 3906 Cooper's Lane, has been in our family since the mid-1960s. We have resided on the property since 1981. My husband's brother and his wife moved into his parents' home after his parents passed away. We all feel a deep connection to this land. As we have aged, we realized that it would be impossible to maintain the property to the standard that we would both like. Both families had decided to sell the house in whole and downsize. We talked to several developers, and after inspecting the homes that were being built by James Johns, decided that it would be an asset to the neighborhood to have Mr. Johns and his partner develop our land. We felt that the addition of the walking path and the lake would be a great selling point to the nice upscale homes they would be building. With the passing of my husband's brother in January, our move has become even more necessary. We understand the reluctance of adjoining property owners to face change, but it is time for us to make a change in our lifestyle, and we feel that approving the Cooper's Crossing development as it is presented would advance the feel of community that buyers are looking for today. Thank you for your consideration, Kevin and Vicki Ewell. And one final letter from Carol Ewell. My name is Carol Ewell, and I am the property owner at 3906 Coopers Lane. Tonight, you will be considering the application from JT Development Group for the proposed Cooper's Crossing subdivision. This 40-acre property has been in our family since 1963. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Kevin and Vicki Ewell, and I are at a point in our lives where it is no longer feasible to keep the property in its current state and in the family. We are in full support of the subdivision proposed. The homes will be listed from $260,000 to $350,000 and will be built the same as those in Williams Crossing. Such a development will enhance the property values and the community of the surrounding homes subdivisions. We have looked at the finished homes, and they are all well built and are a welcome addition to the Jeffersonville housing market. As with time and progress, situations change. The Armstrongs, the Ellingsworths, the Williams, and others have sold their farmland, and now it is time for the Ewells to do as well. If the Cooper's Crossing subdivision does not proceed, we will sell to another developer. Thank you for your time, Carol Ewell. That concludes correspondence.
Okay, at this point in time, public comment is still open. We're going to let Shelby, how are we going to handle the individuals? Is there anyone down there that wants to speak?
Yes, we have two people down here, and I will introduce them. I was going to quickly read. We had two Facebook comments. I'm not going to read through them, but they were, one was an additional comment about the Creekstone connection using limestone trace, as well as another comment on drainage. It's reiterating what we heard in those letters. And with that, Sandy Plass is going to speak first. Are you ready? Yes. Her address, she is at 4208 Limestone Trace.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the council members this evening. My name is Sandy Plass, and I have lived in the Creekstone Ridge neighborhood for about 20 years. At a recent cul-de-sac meeting, I learned that the city of Jeffersonville is planning to open Limestone Trace into the new Cooper Crossing subdivision. 102 homes will be built. As many as 300 new cars will have access to Creekstone Ridge subdivision as a main thoroughfare to Charlestown Pike. Residents of Cooper's Crossing will not drive out onto Cooper's Lane, turn right, drive to the four-way stop at Charlestown Pike and Utica-Sellersburg Road, and then turn right to travel toward Homan's Lane. They will simply cut through Limestone Trace. With the addition of up to 300 cars from the 102 homes in Cooper's Crossing, Limestone Trace will be the new Veterans Parkway. We, the residents of Creekstone Ridge, object to the infringement of our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, safety for our children and one another with this increased traffic. When one drives into Creekstone Ridge, the neighborhood is clean, serene, tranquil, and calming. The homes are brick with well-maintained properties. There is plenty of green grass between each home. The streets are 28 feet wide with generous and broad roads. When I asked why Limestone Trace needed to be open, the answer was rather benign and rote. The city says it was always meant to be open because the blacktop just ends. Now, personally, I could say that I was always meant to be married to the Reverend Richard E. Plass. He divorced me 20 years ago and married one of his counselees. What was decided upon 20 years ago by my ex-husband changed my life. Similarly, the decision made 20 years ago to open Limestone Trace today will change the lives of hundreds of our residences of Creekstone Ridge. I could maybe say that the board needs a divorce from the 20-year-old city decision to open Limestone Trace. In the first cul-de-sac meeting I attended, the architect said he could simply cul-de-sac their side of Limestone Trace and add an east and a west entrance onto Cooper's Lane. Problem solved. I personally, on Sunday, walked my neighborhood asking for residents to sign in favor of not opening up Limestone Trace. I spoke with many people. They all said the same thing. Number one, they love living in Creekstone Ridge. Tranquil, safe, calming environment, peaceful, etc. Number two, they do not want the added traffic on Limestone Trace from a subdivision that has a genre so different than Creekstone. I'm a capitalist and a very proud American, as I am sure you are as well. I feel enormously blessed to live in America. However, I have been observing what might be called ugly capitalism. It's an infringement on the rights of certain groups of people who want to enjoy their life, their liberties, and their pursuits of happiness. Creekstone Ridge residents push strollers down the street, ride bikes with their kiddos, skateboard, walk their dogs, and pick up after them. They walk to lose weight. Couples walk holding hands. We women stand in the middle of the street and neighbors visit. Several residents jog. I walk and pick up trash. I'm affectionately called the trash lady. Why do I do this? Because my mama said to me, always leave a place better than you found it. If Limestone is opened, our community will never be the same. We now enjoy one of the most pleasant and safe neighborhoods in all Jeffersonville. I would personally invite each one of you to drive through our 20-year-old Creekstone Ridge community and observe its tranquility, cleanliness, security, and peacefulness. I wonder what Williams Crossing and Cooper's Crossing will look like in 20 years. Number two, ugly capitalism is opening a road that potentially could be a getaway road after committing a burglary. Creekstone Ridge has a remarkably low crime rate. Could it be that since we are simply one large horseshoe-shaped community, it is difficult to get in and out of and not be seen? Number three, ugly capitalism is cramming houses in so close to one another and even asking for variances to build them even closer to maximize optimum profit. Even the streets are 4 feet narrower than the streets in Creekstone Ridge. The houses are 12 feet apart. Will the homeowners be able to push a lawnmower past their air conditioning unit? A brick home in Cooper's Crossing is a rarity. And in the light of the narrower streets, should there be no overnight parking on the streets for access of emergency vehicles? Jim John said the town of Jeffersonville is into density. I do not understand what that means. The large warehouses on 62 are receiving 10-year tax abatements. They are huge. There seems to be no density issue with those buildings. Number 4, ugly capitalism is having no concern for the horrible drainage issues the residents of Creekstone Ridge, and as I heard tonight, other subdivisions, especially along Silver Slate, have to endure. One woman's in-ground swimming pool is a mud hole. The Ools land frequently floods over Cooper's Lane. Cooper's Lane becomes impassable. I understand this is for another committee, but just another observation of ugly capitalism. Number 5, the residents of Creekstone Ridge are not asking for 10-year abatements, new sewers, widening of Charlestown Pike, etc. We are asking for nothing. We are asking for nothing to be done with the end of Limestone Trace. We're asking for no tax dollars to be spent. We're asking for a divorce from the old thinking of 20 years ago when that's the way it's always been, the mentality existed. George Orwell wrote about ugly capitalism in 1984 when he asked a question to Winston. How does one man assert his power over another, Winston? Winston thought, by making him suffer, he said. Exactly, by making him suffer. Obedience is not enough. Unless he is suffering, how can you be sure that he is obeying your will and not his own? Power is inflicting pain and humiliation. Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. Do you begin to see then what kind of worlds we are creating? It is the exact opposite of the stupid, hedonistic utopias that the old reformers imagined. A world of fear and treachery, its torment, a world of trampling and being trampled upon, a world in which grow not less, but more merciless as it refines itself. Progress in our world will be progress toward more pain. Orwell's words were well spoken years ago. Apparently 20 years ago, the city determined Limestone Trace would one day be opened into an adjoining subdivision. Who is the city? A few unelected employees? We do not want to be connected. I experienced divorce and I am asking the city to do the same with the assumption of a thoroughfare into an adjoining subdivision. Please divorce the idea of opening Limestone Trace into Cooper's Crossing. We, the residents of Creekstone Ridge, have enjoyed our freedoms for 20 years. And recently, we all received huge tax increases. Mine, personally, increasing $20,000. So the city wants us to pay huge tax increases, yet remove more freedoms and safety. For what purpose? The future residents of Cooper's Crossing will know no difference, since they will never know of their ability to enter and exit on Limestone Trace. However, the residents of Creekstone Ridge will know a huge difference. As a board, you have the power to speak with the city and change this decision. I ask that the city reconsider their decision. Help Creekstone Ridge to maintain its freedom, less traffic, more safety. We recommend no opening of Limestone Trace into any subdivision. We desire to remain Creekstone Ridge and not a thoroughfare to another subdivision. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'm a grateful resident of Creekstone Ridge, and my name is Sandy Plass.
Thank you.
I collected 103 names over the weekend. I probably could have collected another 103, but I ran out of time. So if you want me to get more names, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more speaker down in this council chambers. We have Vicki Uhl coming to speak.
Thank you.
Members of the board, thank you for all the time that we've taken up. I'm going to make this short and sweet. I had a letter prepared, but Chad read it, and he did an excellent job of expressing our concerns and reading the letter. I appreciate, again, all of you members listening to what we had to say, and my husband and I would like to just say that we would wish that you vote through the proposed variances as they have been presented. We are in full support of the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to verify, Shelby, we good?
Yes, we're good down here.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. At this point in time, Chad, do you have any further from no more letters?
I don't.
Okay. At this point in time, we're going to close public comment, and we are going to open up for the board for comments, concerns, or questions to the presenters.
Just a few questions here, if you don't mind, Mike.
Go ahead, sir.
And John, are you the ones that are helping with this project? I mean, over representation here. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this just helps me get a better view. Who, the people that are developing this new property, how long have they owned that piece of property?
They have it under
And
contract.
were they developers of Creekstone? I'm sorry?
They have it under contract currently.
Did they develop the Creekstone Ridge property?
To my knowledge, no. They are developing Williams Crossing. As I indicated, those are two items that are on your agenda, the very next two agenda items, but they're developing Williams Crossing.
Is there a reason why?
Likewise, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll let you finish. I apologize. The delay.
I understand. Mr. Johns, as you may be aware, has developed a number of developments in the city of Jeffersonville. And in this instance, JT is Jim Johns and Don Thieneman together. But Mr. Johns has a history of developing in the city of Jeffersonville a number of developments, quite nice neighborhoods throughout the city of Jeffersonville. He is partnering with Don Thieneman. Don has traditionally done a number of developments in Floyd County and city of New Albany, as well as in Harrison County under the name of the Thieneman Group. So you have two experienced developers that have joined forces to do Cooper's Crossing, and likewise they joined forces to do Williams Crossing.
Another question is probably because of the city's less restrictions. The property, the subdivision that's going through, there's 75-foot wide lots. Why is this subdivision only required to have 50-foot wide lots and a narrow road?
I'm sorry, again, the delay, I thought you were finished. I'll touch on a bit of it, and then I'll let Jason Copperwaite likewise address it. Part of this is to allow for the development of the common area. As you might recall at the beginning of the presentation, there's 10.3 acres of green space. Floyd County, and not saying that Jeffersonville is Floyd County, but a number of counties and cities and municipalities throughout the state have started looking at what we call conservation subdivisions. And the whole idea behind the conservation subdivisions have been much of what's happening here, and that is to develop a green space to allow for use by the residents. And ultimately, if we look at the density, while the density is on smaller lots, and I'll let Chad address this as well as Jason Copperwaite address it, but ultimately the density is not much different than the by right density if we had the normal sized lots without the common area. So the idea is to take advantage of green space. The market is currently, I heard one of the individuals that spoke against it indicate, well, people won't buy these. The interesting aspect of the market right now is this is exactly what the public wants. They don't want the large yards. They don't want have to go home and mow the grass and spend their time in their yards mowing grass. They want the small lots. And again, with the price point of these properties, they're selling. And for that reason, the desire was to grant that green space to the residents to be able to use. The homeowners association will maintain it, and it gives them that green space in addition to what some people viewed as a small yard. They have that green space. I'll let Jason Copperwaite also address those issues, but ultimately, by creating this, it really doesn't vary much from the actual density that would be the by right density without the green space.
So basically what we've done here is clustered the lots on the higher elevations of the land. There's nothing in state law or in your ordinance that would prevent the developers from filling in the floodplain, but we're trying to preserve that area so that so we don't do that. So we leave that floodplain capacity there. If the floodplain were filled and it was developed in R1 density standards, your ordinance calls for somewhere between 3 and 4 dwelling units per acre. We're at 2.45. That would be under the R1 standards, that would be 120, somewhere between 122 and 162 lots. We're asking for 97 with plus the 3 outlots. So again, on density wise, we're less than what your ordinance would allow, but the clustering of the lots in the higher areas allows us to protect those common areas and answer the concerns that the neighbors had with drainage and all the other things that they mentioned, as I mentioned earlier. The narrower streets, I'm not sure where that came from. Your subdivision ordinance requires 32-foot wide back-to-back curved streets. And because we're not a planned unit development, we're coming in under your standard subdivision ordinance. That's what we're planning to construct. So it's wider, it's 4 feet wider than what's in Creekstone.
Another
I
question.
confirmed, Steve, I confirmed that with Sean. Sean did go out and conduct some measurements. The roads will meet the requirements of the city, so there's no width difference. The roads will be constructed as required.
Right.
Another question, if I could, please. How many houses can they build as a matter of right versus how many they can build with the current plan?
So if we filled the floodplain, we could build somewhere between 122 and 162 versus the 97 or 100 that we're requesting.
And Mr. Webb, that would be as a matter of right, which ultimately all of this would then be ministerial in nature.
Okay, thank you.
Does any other board member have any comments, concerns, or questions for the applicant?
I have a comment. I would just like to, I feel like the other homeowners around the area seem to be pretty reasonable. It seems to me, I'm opposed to this as it's presented. I think most of the homeowners around the area would be okay with it if the number of houses went down a little bit and we got closer to the variances. So that's what I would like to see. Thank you.
I personally didn't see through some of the comments that anyone was, well, there were some, but not a majority were not against the project. They just don't want the connection into some of their subdivisions. That's just my viewpoint. Anyone else? If not, then we're going to move for some type of a motion to either approve or deny the preliminary plat. We have no further comments or questions. I'm going to move for one of the board members to make a motion that we approve or deny the preliminary plat that's being presented here today.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat with the requirements as stated.
I have a approval of the preliminary plat made by Deward Avery with those recommendations that are in there. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Burns, seconded. We'll need to do a roll call. So Chad, at this point in time, we're ready for a roll call vote.
Thank you. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
No.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Aye.
Mr. Avery,
Aye.
Mr. Butterf.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for being very patient. Chad, is everybody okay to proceed forward? Okay. Going to move on to number 2 in old business. JT Development Group LLC filed a rezoning application for a property in the 4000 block of Williams Crossing Way. The property is zoned R2-PD, which is residential. The request is to amend the PUD. The docket number is PC-20-20. Do we have representation here today?
Yes, Mr. President, John Kraft with the firm of Young, Lind, Emerson Kraft, 126 West Spring Street, appearing on behalf of the applicant, along with Jason Copperwaite being the engineer. As I touched on a bit in the first docket, which was Cooper's Crossing, this is somewhat interrelated because with the Cooper's Crossing moving forward, the desire is to take the planned unit development district, which was, of course, technically a rezone. And due to the creation of Cooper's Crossing, this would allow a common area that is going to then be part of a replat of what is necessary under the PUD in Williams Crossing. The desire is to bring these together. Again, we heard a bit of that comment, but it is for this subdivision to allow the connectivity with Williams Crossing and Cooper's Crossing, as well as a newly proposed area that ultimately would be a common area. That's the need for it, and because it is a planned unit development district, it would require a rezone under the terms of the ordinance, and we would be asking for a favorable recommendation with regards to this request to go to the city council for its determination. I'll let Jason Copperwaite touch on the actual matter as to how it's being done, but ultimately the request is to rezone in order to replat this portion of Williams Crossing.
And this goes along with your next docket item, which is a preliminary plat for that. But this would, again, would replace a cul-de-sac at the end of Williams Crossing Way, would provide for a stub to connect into Cooper's Crossing, and then there are 3 additional lots being created on where that former cul-de-sac would have been. And all those lots would match what's going on in Williams Crossing.
Thank you. At this point in time, we are going to open up for public comment. Chad, do we have letters for this one?
I do not.
Okay. Shelby, what about downstairs?
We are good down here. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Again, open up for public comment. We have no letters and no one here to speak. At this point in time, we will close public comment. We will allow the board to ask comments or have any comments, concerns, or questions. Feel free to address the applicant. If not, if there's no comments, concerns, or questions for the applicant that we're seeking, this will be forwarded on to the city council. But from this board, we need to make a favorable recommendation, an unfavorable recommendation, or no recommendation at all. So if someone would like to entertain one of those, we would be willing.
I make a motion to forward the rezoning request PC 2020 to the Jeffersonville City Council with a favorable recommendation as presented to the Plan Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Chris. Chad, we're ready for a vote, or ready for a roll call vote.
Thank you. Where did I set my... Sorry. Mr. Avery.
Aye.
Mr. Butterf.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Mr. Paris.
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Aye.
Thank you
very much.
Carries.
We're going to move on to old business number 3. JT Development Group LLC filed a preliminary plat application for a property in the 4,000 block of Williams Crossing Way. The property is zoned R2 PD residential. The proposed development is an addition of 3 lots to an existing planned development. The docket number is PC 2021. Do we have representation?
Yes, Mr. President, John Kraft appearing for the applicant along with Jason Copperwaite. As we touched on in the first 2 dockets, this kind of goes hand in hand with those first 2 and is necessary as it relates to the rezone. What ultimately will occur will be the final plat for Williams Crossing will be reworked to allow for the road geometry, if you want to call it that ultimately allows the connectivity that was covered in the first docket when we talked about Cooper's Crossing. That's the only request with respect to the plat, and certainly it's necessary as a result of the development of Cooper's Crossing, and then likewise the connectivity that connects the developments.
Thank you. Jason, do you have anything to add?
I'll just say ditto.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Do we have any letters or anything that we need to address in this one?
We do not.
And Shelby, are we good downstairs?
We are good down here.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll close public comment and we will open this up for discussion with the board. If the board does not have anything they want to add, then we are seeking an approval or denial of the preliminary plat.
If there are no comments, I'll make an approval that we forward positive approval of the preliminary plat.
No, we are approving the plat. We're not making a motion to forward. We're going to make a motion to approve the plat.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the plat.
Okay, and let me hold up for just a second and make sure. I know we paused for just a second, but is there all board members have no comments or questions? Is that correct? If not, I'll seek a second. I'm seeking a second to Mr. Avery's proposal of approval.
I second his motion.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Chad, we're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Bodorf?
Aye.
Mr. Burns?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Paris?
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Aye.
Mr. Avery?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. We're going to move into new business. On number 1 on the new business tonight is the Planning and Zoning Department filed a public hearing to discuss amending an error in the zoning map of multiple properties at the corner of Utica-Sellersburg Road and New Chapel Road. The proposed amendment would rezone from existing C2 commercial to R1 residential. The docket number is PC-20-28. Do we have representation?
Thank you. This is Chad Reichel, Director of Planning and Zoning. At the May 26th Plan Commission meeting, staff asked the commission to initiate a public hearing in order to gauge the interest in correcting a perceived zoning map error for multiple parcels that are used in a residential neighborhood. They're used in a residential nature, but they are zoned for high intensity commercial uses. These lots are at the corner of New Chapel Road and Utica-Sellersburg Road. We sent notification to these 22 property owners in the area just to gauge interest in correcting the perceived error. Once these letters were sent to property owners, we received multiple phone calls from those property owners, and the overwhelming response that we, the planning department, got was that the folks who live there want to keep the zoning as it is. Therefore, we are requesting that no further action be taken in this matter and that the properties remain zoned C2. We would recommend that the board makes a motion to recommend no further action. Thank you.
Okay, at this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Is there any public comment letters or anything? You did mention the fact that you had communication with some of those residents.
Yes, we did have communication, but no actual official letters. Just everyone basically said, you know, it's been commercial. I'd rather keep it that way. So, yeah.
Okay. Shelby, we good? Thank you. Does the board have any comments, concerns, or questions? If not, we're seeking, you're not really an approval, we're just seeking to leave it as is
That's correct.
and take a vote as just leaving everything as is.
Yes.
Go ahead,
I
Mr.
make
Burke. Oh, go ahead.
So I'll make a motion that we leave the resident property all commercial. C1, was it?
C2.
C2?
Second.
Thank you. Chad, we're ready.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Aye.
Mr. Avery,
Aye.
Mr. Budorf,
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. We're moving on to number 2. Neil Kamer filed a preliminary plat application for a property at 2524 Cooper's Lane. The property is zoned R2 residential. The proposed development named Gailey Subdivision, I hope that pronounced that correctly, and consists of 4 residential lots. The docket number is PC-20-29. Do we have representation?
Yes, David Blankenbaker on behalf of Mr. Kamer, who is sitting here with me tonight. I'll try and be brief. It looks like we got a long one. There are 4 lots as mentioned. There are 2 commons areas, which is why it says in your staff report 6 lots. Those commons areas are for green space, entryways, and drainage. There is one misprint on the staff report. It says the developer is requesting a waiver for side yard from 7 feet down to 6 feet. In fact, I've spoken with Chad about this just today. The requirement is 6 feet, so we meet that requirement. We are going to ask for a couple of variances, actually 3 variances next month at the BZA meeting. Those being not being on a public street, the minimum lot area from 7,500 down to 6,825, and our entrance drive is not 40 feet from the neighbor's drive. It is adjoining the neighbor's drive, but the reason for that is safety. It's at the top of a hill. So it's pretty straightforward. Mr. Kamer plans to build 4 extremely nice individual homes there. And he and I are here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Any letters, anything? Chad,
We have one, thank you. We spoke with Ronald Smith, who lives at 2519 Cooper's Lane. Initially, he was opposed to the project, thought that the lots were too small and didn't really fit with the rural surroundings. Although we've had some conversations with him, and it seems that he is no longer opposed to the project. He would like to make sure that these homes are nice and maybe are built with brick veneer on those houses, just again, to make them as nice as possible. So.
Gotcha. Shelby, we good? Thank you. At this point in time, we'll close public comment. We'll open up for the board. Does the board have any comments, concerns, or questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Blankenbaker a question. David, Mr. Blankenbaker, is this similar to the 4 units that were built there by the Elks at the number 3 hole? If so, that's a very good infill project. And someone said this would be very similar to those. I've driven by those. They look very nice.
Yeah, those are, Mr. Avery, I should say, those are very nice. I agree with you. But those are attached houses. These
right.
Are
they're more of a duplex, but these will be detached.
Well, but these homes are just 4 individual single-family homes, more like the Buttonwood neighborhood than the Hamburg Pike area that you mentioned. They're just
so essentially you're getting a very high improvement to the area with similar type properties on an infill lot.
Yeah, and it was mentioned about brick. These are all brick with a stone accent. I believe they're 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. You remember the square footage? I think they're 1,600 square feet, 1,800 square feet.
1,800 square feet.
These are going to be very, very,
expensive.
very nice homes.
The other one there at that's across from the Elks, that turned out that really improves that neighborhood, and I'd heard this was going to be very similar to that, so that one's turned out very nice infill project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, we are seeking an approval or a denial of the preliminary plat. If we have no further comments, concerns, or questions, I would entertain a motion for an approval or a denial of the preliminary plat.
I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat.
Mr. Avery has an approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chris Butoff has a second. Chad, we're ready for a vote.
Thank you. Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Aye.
Mr. Avery,
Aye.
Mr. Budorf,
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're going to move on to number 3. Stuart Winchell filed a final plat application for a property in the 3440 block of Charlestown Pike. The property is zoned R3, which is residential. The final plat is for the 22-lot subdivision River Birch Woods. The docket number is PC-20-30. Do we have representation?
Yes, again, David Blankenbaker on behalf of Mr. Winchell. Mr. Winchell is not with me today, but as you probably recall, this item has been in front of you a number of times. You have rezoned this property twice, and you have approved the preliminary plat as well. The final plat was normally be done by the staff. However, during the course of our drainage analysis, it was determined that the cul-de-sac interfered with the drainage a little bit, so that we reconfigured the cul-de-sac slightly, which changed a couple of the lot dimensions. They all still meet code, and for that reason, we're asking the board to approve the final plat rather than the staff. That's really the only thing that's going on here. I did want to mention one thing. Some of the neighbors, and I think it was also in the staff report, mentioned a concern about headlights coming down the road and shining perhaps into their backyard. And Mr. Winchell has agreed to put a berm with landscaping at the end of the cul-de-sac to block any light pollution that might otherwise go into their yards.
Were they satisfied with that?
I've not heard from anybody.
Okay. We're attempting to meet their needs. Any further? All right, at this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. We have any letters, Chad, to deal with?
We do. Mr. Henry Towdy has from 3429 Morgan Trail. His letter, he wrote a letter to the Plan Commission in the January meeting. He wanted that letter to be read into the agenda again, into the record again, I should say, as he's still rather unsatisfied with the development, particularly the changes to the cul-de-sac and the final plat. He also would like to note that he's spoken with drainage and is still a little bit iffy about the flooding issues. So to the Jeffersonville Department of Planning and Zoning, this letter is in reference to the proposed change in zoning behind our neighborhood. The docket number is PC 20-03. The major concern that I have is water drainage of the proposed development. Currently, there are 2 streams runoffs that run through our backyard, one from the highway above 265 and one from our street. During heavy rains, these 2 runoffs become inundated with water and overflow where they come together. With the proposed new development, we are concerned with how this will affect the water and possible flooding caused by these 2 runoffs. There are a few other neighbors near us where one of the runoffs goes through the back of their properties as well. With the proposal of 20 new homes on the 4-acre lot, we're wondering if this will require a cul-de-sac, and if so, will that allow enough room for a large fire truck to come in and be able to turn around without having to back up? As we have been told, it is required in neighborhoods with cul-de-sacs. Since we have been in our house, we have had the pleasure of seeing a variety of wildlife in our backyard coming out of the woods that will have to be taken down for this proposed development. This includes deer, rabbits, turtles, turkeys, cranes, hawks, ducks, squirrels, and a lot of birds. All these animals will be displaced. And of course, with the necessity of taking down most or all of the trees and shrubs, it will greatly increase the noise coming down from the freeway as the trees are our only buffer. We would greatly appreciate if you would take these concerns under advisement when making your decisions about this proposed project. Sincerely, Henry and Jean Taft.
Thank you very much. Shelby, we good? Okay. At this point in time, we'll close public comment. If the board has any comments, concerns, or questions, feel free to ask.
I will say on behalf of staff, I'm glad that the developer is willing to do some mitigation at the end of that cul-de-sac. It was one of my concerns when I first saw that. Saw the new layout with the cul-de-sac sort of ending directly in the Mr. Towdy's backyard. So I'm glad that we can work something out. Hopefully there's some landscaping included with that berm as well.
So may I ask a question then? This is essentially the way the project was presented, but with the fine tuning to improve the drainage and making sure the fire truck has access and some things. So it's basically what we approved last time, but it's actually improved for the area at the end of the cul-de-sac. Is that correct? With the improvements that you felt were necessary to improve the area?
That's correct. In fact,
Yeah.
Mr. We increased the size of the cul-de-sac from what was originally approved. So we have a little bit more room. I'm not going to tell you that you're going to turn a full-size fire truck around in there. Mr. McCutcheon would probably smack me if I made a mistake. But certainly we'll be able to get the fire truck in and out. That is definitely doable. As to the other items, briefly on drainage, we are pending in front of the drainage board right now. And the drainage on this property and on Mr. Towdy's property drains to the west away from Mr. Towdy. The property has a detention basin on it that will capture all the water from the site and just distribute it slowly into that drain. But again, that drain goes away from Mr. Towdy. And then lastly, with regard to the trees, I forgot to mention, I did also speak to Mr. Winchell about that. And it's his intention to try and leave a buffer of trees along the interstate as best that he can. Certainly, you know, a lot of that will have to be cleared from the interstate over, but right along the interstate fence, we're going to try and leave a buffer of trees there, both for sound and the visual.
Okay, sounds like you made a lot of additional effort.
Thank you.
Any further comments, concerns, or questions? If not, then we're seeking a motion for approval or denial of the plat without additional conditions.
I'll make a motion that we approve the plat.
Mr. Avery has made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Webb. Chad, we're ready.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Budorf,
Aye.
Mr. Avery.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to number 4, Victoria and Mindy Johns with Millennium Builders LLC filed a preliminary plat application for a property in the 400 block of East Maple Street and 326 Walnut Street. The property is zoned R3 residential. The proposed development is development Magnolia Row, consists of 5 residential lots. The docket number is PC-20-31. Do we have representation?
Yes, again, this is David Blankenbaker, 618 East Court Avenue. I have Victoria here sitting beside me. This project originally belonged to Wayne Stopenall, who's we all know now deceased. And Wayne had a plan for this, came before you a few years ago to present that plan, and it obviously didn't happen because of the tragic circumstances of his death. Out of that, his family has sold the property to Mindy and Victoria Johns, and they want to do a very similar development, slightly different, 5 lots on frontage property on Walnut Street, the corner of Walnut and Maple. This is directly across from St. Luke's United Church of Christ, which happens to be the church that I attend. I think most of us in the church, I hope, are pretty excited about this. If you have had a chance to look at the renderings that she has submitted, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not. Hopefully it's in your packet, but I thought that was one of the nicest looking houses that we've seen in the downtown area proposed in a while. I believe the price point is $300 and up. Is that right? So we're not talking about anything inexpensive here. It's in a great location and does have a rear alley. There will be 2-car garage attached at the back. With that, I'll take any questions, or Victoria's here as well.
Oh, Mike, you need to unmute.
I got it. Sorry. At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Any letters or anything?
I have a couple. First of all, Tammy Carter. She is a resident next door to the property here on Walnut Street. She wanted specifically to know if there will be any way that the developers will be providing privacy fences between the houses and the alley that will back up to her property. She really wants to state for the record that a fence or a wall will be needed for her support of this project. We have a letter from Dustin White. He states, I am in support of the preliminary plat PC 20-31 and development standards BZA 2029 applications as submitted by Victoria and Mindy Johns. They have consistently provided great housing products throughout District 1, and I am confident in their ability to produce a great product at this location, whether it be duplexes or single-family homes. I humbly request that the Plan Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals approve these applications as submitted. Sincerely, Dustin T. White. And then I have one more letter. This one is from Jeff Funk at 409 East Maple. He says, nice speaking, well, he addresses this to Sean. Nice speaking to you the other day about the plans for 400 East Maple Street. I think as we discussed, that some of the houses built into that area with designs similar to the surrounding architecture would be fine. I'm really just against the variance they're asking for. That would allow them to squeeze in 5 houses. That alone would make them stand out among the properly spaced structures. I understand from the builder's perspective that more houses translates to more profit, but the neighborhood could be transformed forever with this decision and will be around long after those profits are gone. I could see 3 houses put there, but that is all. These are my thoughts in writing as requested by the Department of Planning and Zoning. Thank you, Jeff Funk.
Okay. Shelby, we good? Thank you. At this point in time, we'll close public comment. We'll allow the board to ask questions. Feel free to any comments, concerns, or questions.
Mike, I'd like to ask Mr. Blankenbaker, substantially, this is very similar to what Mr. Estopanol had requested, only it changes the architecture, I think, and also I agree with Councilman White's support of the project. The downtown area, this makes the neighborhood improving, and when you're building $310,000 houses with that appearance, access from the alley, etc., the entire neighborhood is positively impacted. So it's another great project among the ones we've had. And I think this is a very, very good project for downtown. And the developer there has built things in the past that have all been very nice and improved the neighborhood. So this is a significant improvement.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns, or questions from the board? If not, then we are seeking a motion for approval or denial of the preliminary plat.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat as presented.
Mr. Budorf, have a motion of approval of the plat. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, we got a bunch. Let's go with Steve. Sorry, there's a little tie there. We're all good. Chad, we're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Avery.
Aye.
Mr. Budorf.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. We're getting close. Michael Schuler filed a development plan application for a property at 4203 Middle Road. The property is zoned R1-PD Residential Plan Development. The proposed development is a multifamily residential section that consists of 4 buildings totaling 96 units. The docket number is PC-20-32. Do we have representation?
Mr. Chairman, Jason Copperwaite with Paul Primavera and Associates, here representing DDM LLC. This is, as you mentioned, part of the overall Wolf Run project that was approved by the Plan Commission probably 2 years ago, and then subsequently approved by the City Council. This was the multifamily section of that. It is 96 units on just a little over 6 acres. The plan that you see is exactly what was presented as part of that PUD approval. The only difference is on that plan, we didn't show a trash corral and a mailbox location, which we've added to this plan. You've got a lighting, landscaping plan. And then the building elevations again, which is exactly what was presented for the PUD approval. Maybe a couple of last minute changes that I've been talking through with the staff. The landscaping that was approved as part of that PUD for the apartments was based on the old M3 zone. And I've been talking with the staff about perhaps getting a waiver on that. And I've presented a different plan to them. I don't know if the Plan Commission saw that or not. And then we were talking about flip-flopping the trash corral. Right now, the doors of the trash corral face Parkland Trail, which is going to be the main entrance and the main back entrance into Ellingsworth Commons in the future. Right now, you would see the gates. We talked about flipping it to the other side of the street, so you would see the brick back of the corral from the entryway rather than seeing the gates. And we're certainly more than agreeable to do that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, at this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Chad, do we have any letters on this one?
We have Tony Jackson, Tony Jackson from 4001 Middle Road gave us a call. Originally, he was opposed to the 4 multifamily buildings on the lot adjacent to his. We've sent him the site plan and had some contact with him. He's reviewed this and is generally okay with it, although he still has some concerns with drainage. Again, this will have to go to the drainage board. So.
Gotcha.
It's actually already been approved by the drainage board.
It has been approved through the drainage board. So, okay, I
Okay.
misspoke there. Sorry.
Shelby, you good?
I had a couple comments from Elizabeth Jackson. And she says, since clarification on where they are planning on building, we feel better about it. But are they going to rip out the trees along the creek? We want the trees left for privacy and or a privacy fence put up on the side of the building. This is to prevent people from crossing into my property, disrupting my belongings and pets. Drainage is always an issue. Runoff into the creek will not be good for the creek or the wildlife in it. I am thinking of oil and gas, etc. runoff from cars in the parking area. And if it floods the creek, it will flood our yards even more than it does now. How will the traffic be handled on Middle Road? Traffic is already crazy. There have been times it has taken me 10 minutes to get out of my driveway. Traffic backs up past my driveway during morning and evening rush hours from Port Road. 96 more families coming and going will greatly increase this toll. That was from Elizabeth Jackson on the Facebook comments.
Thank you.
As far as the trees along the creek, no, that's part of our, we were required to get an IDNR permit in order to create a creek crossing on Lankasang, which we did. But part of that approval was to leave all those trees along the creek. The only place they'll be removed is where the actual crossing is. If the Jackson's house is the one I'm thinking of, it's completely surrounded by common space. It's not directly adjacent to the multifamily. So I'm not really sure why the developer would need to build a fence. And then as far as the traffic goes, this was all approved 2 years ago, and the Plan Commission and City Council heard all those concerns. This will be the primary or the secondary access to the back of Ellingsworth Commons, as well as there's 50 lots to be developed, single family lots to be developed north of the multifamily. So we do have to do acceleration, deceleration lanes, tapers all on Middle Road in order to accommodate those turning movements.
Thank you. Shelby, will you be able to relay what little bit of that information that's vital to the questions to her?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Does the board have any comments? At this point in time, we'll close public comment and then we'll open up for the board. Does the board have any comments, concerns, or questions for the applicant?
Let me interject just about the waiver from landscaping that they're requiring. Jason Copperweight had submitted a landscape plan that met the standards of the PUD, and I mean, it was an excessive amount of trees. I'm the biggest tree lover on the planet, but it was, I mean, trees were crammed 10 feet apart from each other in parking lot islands, and it was just really excessive. That the standards weren't written very well back in the day, and we've reviewed it against our own standards. We feel that these guys are now providing more trees than we actually require. So I'm great with the waiver. They're just waiving the standards that were in the PD in lieu of what's being presented to you. And as I said, it's actually greater amount of trees than we would require normally. So we're happy with that.
Thank you, Chad. Does the board have any further comments, concerns, or questions?
I had a question, and I had someone call me about this, and just with regards to the traffic, and I drive through there all the time, and it has gotten worse over time here. So I just wondered if there are any ideas as to widen the road, put a light there. Has anyone heard that they have plans to do that?
As far as I know, there aren't any plans. We have been having a few conversations with the Port of Indiana internally about Port and Middle, but I mean, we haven't moved forward with any specific planning objectives in the area. But we are well aware that, you know, there are some sort of growing traffic issues in that area that will have to be addressed at some point in time.
We do not expect a stoplight to be placed at that intersection anytime soon. It's under the jurisdiction of the state and the Port Commission, and
Okay.
until and if they make the decision that they want a light there will be no light there. And we would love for a light to be there. We've asked for a light, but Joe, until you're governor, I guess we'll have to wait.
Thank you.
I think that in some retrospect is that the road on Middle Road is very well developed and robust to handle quite a bit more traffic than some other areas that we're putting a lot of development in. We're going to really need some attention. But any other comments, concerns, or questions? If not, we're seeking a motion for an approval or denial of the development plan.
Oh, Mr. Burns is muted.
Are you a thumbs up?
Yeah, I made a motion to approve.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sorry.
Sir. Do
Thank
we
you.
have a second?
Second.
Gotcha. Chad, we're ready.
Mr. Avery,
Aye.
Mr. Budorf,
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Murray Wilkinson filed a rezoning application for property at 3519 Utica Sellersburg Road. The property is zone C2, which is commercial, and the proposed zoning is R1, which is residential. The docket number is PC-20-33. Do we have representation today?
This is Maury. I'm here.
Go ahead. Can you tell us what you're wanting to do?
Yes, we're just wanting to add 2 rooms onto the back of our house and an adjacent garage. It'll be away from the road. It's not going to make our residence any closer to the road. It'll improve the look. And as you're going into Crystal Springs, our house will be much more attractive, headed into there. So I just can't imagine it would be a bad thing.
Okay.
The issue in front of you, of course, is that this property is zoned C2, which is, for a Walmart or a Walgreens or something like that. And so it makes it very difficult for him to add on to his house, which is why he's requesting the change from C2 back down to R1, which is what most of the properties in the area are. So.
Gotcha. So this is just a preliminary. We're just dealing with this so that the paperwork and everything is correct for him to move forward.
Yep.
Okay, at this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Is there anything? Chad, do you have anything?
I do not.
Shelby, are you good? Okay, thank you. At this point in time, we'll close public comment. We'll open it up for the board. If the board doesn't have anything, we're seeking a recommendation to send on to the city council for favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation. But don't rush on that. If you have comments, concerns, or questions, feel free to ask.
If there's no comment, I'll make a motion for a favorable recommendation on PC-20-33.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. We have a favorable recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Butoff. Chad, we're ready.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Bodorf,
Aye.
Mr. Avery,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Joe Flemoing, I can't hit that one, with Crystal Springs Homeowners Association Incorporated, filed a development plan application for a property at 3004 Crystal Springs Boulevard. The property is zoned R1 residential. The proposed development is an expansion of the existing neighborhood clubhouse. The docket number is PC-20-34. Do we have representation?
Mr. Chairman, Jason Copperweight again with Paul from Avira and Associates. Crystal Springs Homeowners Association owns the clubhouse and pool within Crystal Springs. Adjacent to that is a parking area, drive lane, and an existing tennis court. What they're looking to do is convert that existing tennis court into additional parking. Sometimes they run into problems when they have events or when they lease out the clubhouse with having enough parking. And then they want to construct a basketball court and tennis court and additional parking along Julia Court to serve that area. They own, I think it's 6 lots or 4 lots and parts of 2 others, and this will allow them to better serve their residents. There are a few variances required: lot coverage, the number of accessory structures, the size of the accessory structures. If you consider a tennis court and basketball court an accessory structure, the setback for the tennis court, and then the chain link fence around the sports courts exceeds the maximum just by its very nature. And then total number of spaces. This is in an R1 zone, and there's really no provision under the ordinance to allow for community clubhouses, I guess, neighborhood clubhouses. So it's kind of there's really no parking standard for that. So it's kind of a catch-all variance, I guess, for that. So we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Chad, do you have anything?
No.
All right. Shelby? All right. At this point in time, we'll close public comment and open up for the board to ask any questions. There's a lot
Joe,
of good
sounds
things.
like this. I'm sorry,
Go ahead,
Mike.
Mr. Smith. Go ahead.
I was on mute. Sorry. Joe, it sounds like this is a big asset to Crystal Springs, right? And everybody's on board with it back in the Crystal Springs, correct?
They had a neighborhood meeting. I think there were a number of questions that were answered then. I haven't heard any objections since then.
Thank you.
Good. All right. At this point in time, if the board has no further comments, concerns, or questions, we're seeking a motion for an approval or denial of the development plan.
I'll make a motion that we approve PC-20-34.
Mr. Webb has a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Budorf. Chad, we're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Budorf,
Aye.
Mr. Avery,
Aye.
Mr. Webb,
Aye.
Mr. Paris,
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you again.
We have 2 to go. Please hang in there. You guys have done great. Kurt Hargrove filed a development plan application for a property at 225 Lumen Way. The property is zoned IR River Ridge. The proposed development is a warehouse of 260K square feet. The docket number is PC-20-35. Do we have representation?
Yes, sir, Mr. McCutcheon. I'm Mark Hildenbrand with HWC Engineering, 303 Scribner Drive, New Albany, Indiana. This is a continued warehouse and industrial development in River Ridge for the Gray Industrial. This will be their 4th building, similar to this one inside of the River Ridge Commerce Center. They've got 2 other ones, one directly to the west of this one, and then one a little bit closer to 62 to the west of this property. At this point, it's a speculative building, but they've had no problem filling these size buildings with tenants as they've built them. The biggest constraint we had on this project is the shape of the property. It was relatively long and kind of a skinny property, so we had to make accommodations for the parking in the front of the building, which we do have 3 variances that will be heard at the BZA meeting after this evening. The way these buildings are set up is they're not sure exactly what the end user is going to be. So they like to have what they call 2 money corners on it. So the front is going to be a money corner with an office, and that's where most of the employees will enter the building. So that makes sense as far as where the parking is located. And then we've also got it set up that potentially they could break this into 2, into half, or a third and 2/3 for a second tenant that would have an access point at the backside of the building, and that's the parking that we have planned on the backside of the building, potentially in the future. It's loaded on one side with docks, and then there's a couple drive-up doors that go into that building. The other variance that we do have is the width of the driveway for the truck dock area. And because of the nature of trucks entering and exiting a building, it's very much similar to several of the other buildings there at River Ridge with a wider entrance road. We do, as was stated in the report, we have all the approvals from River Ridge, and we're complying with all of the River Ridge requirements for the development plan.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
At this point in time, we'll open up for public comment. Chad, do you have anything?
No.
Shelby, you good? Thank you. At this point in time, we'll close public comment and we'll open up for the board. Does the board have any comments, concerns, or questions? If not, if there isn't any, or feel free to ask questions, we're seeking a motion to approve or deny the development plan.
I'll make a motion to approve PC-20-35.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Webb. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Paris, thank you. Chad, we're ready.
Mr. Webb.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Budorf.
Aye.
Mr. Avery.
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon.
Aye.
Mr. Paris.
Aye.
Thanks. Motion carries.
Our last thing on the docket.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, given the late nature of this meeting and the fact that we have a BZA meeting that's supposed to start in a minute, I would like to ask that the board table the next agenda item. It is a into the zoning code. It is not pressing, and it will be fine to be heard at the next meeting.
Okay, I have a motion, or we're seeking a motion to table number 9 under new business. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Mr. Burns, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Webb. Chad, we're ready.
Thank you. Mr. Burns?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Mr. Paris?
Aye.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Aye.
Mr. Avery?
Aye.
Mr. Budorf?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Any comments or anything you need to add at this point, Chad?
I was going to give you guys a little intro to a project we're going to start over the next year, revising the zoning code, but I will postpone that to next month. I will be presenting it to City Council on the 6th. So look for some more information about a full retooling of the zoning ordinance into unified development ordinance at a later date and time. Thank you.
If we don't have anything further, I'll request a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Second? We're
Second.
good. Thank you. And
Thank you all.
we will, we'll take about how about 7:10? Does that give us 10 minutes? Give
I
us
think
enough
that's
time?
probably fine. Yes, thank
Take
you.
just a little break so everybody can stand and stretch, those that are staying and then need to move in. So at 7:10, we hope to reconvene with the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yep, thank you.